Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Welcome to the Connecteurs Innovation Talk. Within Connectors Innovation Talk, we will be talking about innovation and how to connect the dots. Today, my guest is Dennis Luijer. He's the visual thinker, the owner of Visually Yours, a co-founder of Unlock 2020 and the Event Collective, Design Collective, and the author of the book, The Event Design Handbook. Welcome, Dennis, and good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
How are you doing today? Yes. How are you doing today?
I am.
We're live and uncut, by the way, so that might happen in between. That the connection is dropping.
It's okay. No, I'm trying to work with my 3 screens. I am doing fine this fine morning. It was an early morning. We already talked at 6 o'clock European Amsterdam, Holland, and shared Germany time to talk with our good friend Stuart on the other side of the pond. But that was a great start of the innovating week. Talking about
So what did you talk about?
So we talked about how to translate somebody who is very knowledgeable about all kinds of questions to ask when you want to scale up a company. How to make this happen without this person actually being there. So all the knowledge of one person brought back into the questions to ask in a simple canvas. That was the topic of this morning's jump start of the week. Some very nice results. Yeah, and you ask good questions, Jens.
Thank you. So you call yourself a visual thinker. Well, how do you describe a visual thinker to others who don't know you?
So I would say I called myself a visual thinker. And I guess everybody is a visual thinker because I was taught a long time ago by a very old woman who is now even older, who is in Holland visual thinking, so visueel denken, is actually not counted as the thing that everybody is talking about around the world. Visueel denken, so visual thinking, is in the Dutch language actually a condition where kids only think in visuals instead of in text. This is something that requires a different way of teaching. And the interesting thing there is that visual thinking in itself is something that hasn't been valued up until maybe 20 years ago, because everything that we do is built out of logic. You know, we're being taught to construct very, very clear steps and ways, and everything that has to do with visualizing this directly was considered to be something that was childish. Or those notes you make. Oh, that's nice. But over the years, and it's actually something that grew out of the Industrial Revolution, saying that we only value left brain focus because that's quantifiable. You can say I can teach somebody to do a certain thing, and that's a value you can implement in a large organization. But visual thinking opens the door to, I would say, spatial reasoning, which is a very different way of looking at things. And but visual thinking in itself, I think the main thing why I would still call myself, but also you and anybody else in this world, that doesn't bump into things every day. We are all visual thinkers because whenever we make a movement or do anything to stay in our space, we look at things, and based on those things, we make decisions. Even if it's about turning our heads or walking across the street, every step we make visual decisions. And that's the reason why we don't bump into things and why we can shake hands when we extend our hands. And that all has to do with the fact that the visual thinking loop, so you see something, and based on that, you make a decision. That loop, that makes us all visual thinkers.
If you say you're not calling yourself anymore a visual thinker, or you have evolved from that, how would you describe yourself today?
Well, today I would say I hope to have grown into more of a guide, so who uses the powers of visual thinking to make people look at their situations in a different way. And because I make things visible, I make change visible. So that's a very abstract concept to make change visible. But I have grown into a situation where my ability to draw is quite good. And my end result of any session or guided questioning is usually a visual. And that's and that's the way I do things in that sense. So I have my pen, I have a piece of paper, and then throughout this conversation, I will make some notes, and maybe there's something that comes out of it, which makes me, I would say a recorder. But if you say I'm a graphic recorder, I'm not. I use it exactly like I said in the beginning to see what next question to ask. Because I open up the thinking space on the piece of paper that allows me to think beyond what I'm thinking right now. And it's but what I am in that sense, foremost, I'm a designer. I didn't know that before. I think I'm an artist at heart, but design has saved my life in the sense that I, like many others, can be considered to be a quite chaotic person. And design is a way to frame steps towards an end result, and that has been a very good foundation for me to frame the things that I do. So I can be a framer, I can be an illustrator, I can be a designer, homo universalis, maybe.
It's like we discussed this morning in the call. How would you describe yourself as a tool?
Yeah.
So what kind of people are profiting from what you're doing? Like, what kind of people are you helping with what you do, and how do you help them?
So I like the idea that people might profit or benefit from my presence, and how they would benefit. I first would say if I leave, usually everybody's happy. and it can be that it's not that happy in the sense that it's a lot. People tend to also say that when they're done with me, their head is exploding because of the amount of information that's been passing through. But the amount. The way that we actually that I draw and that I create is the deliverable itself is clarity, maybe clarity and a sense of knowing as opposed to when you didn't know anything. My first company, a value proposition that I ever made was going from nothing to something. Because I love to be in a space where you don't know anything, and then you come out with something. It doesn't need to be necessarily valuable instantaneously, but you go from something that isn't there, nothing is there, and then suddenly, ploop, there's something that we connected. Like you said in the beginning, we're connecting the dots, And when you're connecting 2 or 3 dots, and you make that visible, that's usually interesting. So that's usually why people are enthusiastic when I leave. I left them with something that they connected to.
You using this as a bridge. You said connecting the dots. Can you give us a story of your life where you connected the dots? A special moment which you normally don't share.
Well, I can. This is very much related to your very first question about the visual thinking, because I had and have still very good friends who I met in the Technological University in Delft, where I studied. They ended up being my 2 partners in my previous company, Gem Visual Thinking, and one of the first things before we had a name to anything that we were doing. We were drawing. We were student assistants in getting industrial design students to be able to draw in physical, in spatial, not reasoning, but spatial perspective, and being able to draw out products. And this is where we started. And in our conversations, at some point, we put some words together, so visual and thinking. And then when we put the words visual thinking together in Google, and which wasn't Google at the time, but Netscape or whatever, Ask Jeeves or a web crawler, was a long time ago. The first search engines, then suddenly something very interesting happened, because there was a whole world that opened up that I didn't realize was there. There were people who had been using visualization as a tool to advance their way of looking at businesses, and which was hugely interesting to me, because I formulated based on that. I formulated a thesis about myself. But how I want to go into the future, because the idea there was to create a thesis about a famous designer, and I didn't have a particular one that I want to write about. So I said this to my professor, and he said, "Well, write it about yourself." And I did, which was only a 2 study point course. I ended up working on that for like half a year. But it was the foundation for everything I did afterwards, because at that time I formulated something called visual consultancy, which was literally putting 2 things together and saying, well, I can draw, and I don't know if I can consult, but it sounds cool. And then the idea was to see what you could do to use drawing as a tool to think. And this has been foundation for everything I've done afterwards, because but it has been an uphill battle, because people tend to not want to see or relate visualization as a serious way of thinking. Because over the years, I've been trying to fight my way into all kinds of spaces. And one very interesting space was the Dutch government, Tweede Kamer, so the parliament. And the reason I wanted to say, well, I can help you to think and help you reason using visualization. And then they said, well, this is something that we cannot do, because in this arena, we can only debate. We can only use words. And one of their biggest reasons for not allowing visualization inside of the political debate is Colin Powell at the time bringing in a big picture, saying that in Iraq, here are the nukes. This is where they are creating it. And visuals and visualization has the ability to say that something is true while it's even not true. But when you say they are here, then everybody says, "Oh, okay, that's true," and it is it leaves the domain of reasoning in that sense, and of the political debate. So in Holland, you cannot use visuals inside of the political arena, which was very stupid to me in that sense. But I've been trying to battle that for a long time. That's why I said the uphill battle. But one of the main reasons was the fact that visuals are ambiguous. They can be looked at from different perspectives by different people. You can look at a picture of a flower and say, "Oh, this is giving me a very good feeling," and I can look at a flower and say, "Oh, it reminds me of this and this situation," blah blah blah, and it can react so totally, it can create totally different situations. But it's in that sense, the connection that was there was the two words, visual thinking, and putting them together. And from then on, it actually sparked 10 years of my life trying to figure out how to worm myself into the business and actually learn more business education through my already technical perspective that I learned at the University of Delft.
Mm. One of my main visions is to empower people to innovate. So how would you describe innovation and define innovation from your perspective?
So innovation to me is I am married, or not living in sin with my girlfriend, but we have 3 kids, and she is an innovation manager. She used to be for Heineken, and now she does this for a German company called Infarm, a vertical farming farm. And from her perspective, I start at her perspective because it's always been kind of a debate with me and her. Innovation for her at Heineken was creating new marketing around the same product. So you're selling beer, and you either create a new bottle that is geared towards a certain moment or a specific target group, and there's a whole world around how to connect that together. It's more focused on marketing. And I did, of course, an industrial design study, going from nothing to something, from an idea to a mass-produced product. And in the innovation part of that would be when once the product has been made, and you are going to adapt it, which my wife is doing. That's called innovation. But you can also innovate that process, or you can innovate towards a newer product. And once the form and shape of that newer product starts to look even more different, then we may be going from innovate to invent, because we go to something new. But innovating is, I would say, reiterating anything that has a process and that is making it better, improving it.
Yeah. How do you use innovation in your practice?
So in my practice, the main idea, what I do, is to make change visible. I would say, if you look at innovation, the path to innovate, or the path to go from a point A to a point B, and anything that is in between, is the stuff that you realize or you have to do to realize an innovation. Is, from my perspective, I make that visible. So that could be the physical state from going from A to B, which is more of the big change, or the transition, or the transformation. But it could also figure out to what the roadmap in between could look like. And that's going more into the concrete things. What are the objectives that you put down for yourself, that you have to realize in between the A and the B to realize the B? And making those things visible, so making the change visible, making I would say the plan visible, and making the path visible, those are all the things that I do to, I would say, help in realizing innovation happen.
In my experience, it's often down to mindset and I mean, in the end, it's the people who need to innovate. How do you work with people and helping them to unleash their innovation, empower them to innovate?
So empowering somebody to innovate is the only thing you have to do is give them a pen, preferably standing at a really big white wall, and opening up their perspective to a different way of looking at things. That's, I would say, the first step to realizing that there might be another way to do things, and opening up the path to innovation. And once you have the initial thoughts about what this means, and you have made a choice to go into a certain direction, then innovation becomes more about trying to figure out the amount of steps that you need to realize before you have actually changed or if you actually innovated. And empowering people to do that is, I would say, mainly by making them aware that when you do it together and when you do it in iterative steps, and you make those steps visible, you accelerate that process immensely. It's not something that you can think about things all in your head constantly, but once they go out of your head and they get in touch with other people, it exponentially goes into a direction where it's realized, changed, and becomes better over time. And I myself am victim also to a lot of thinking in my own head, where I do know that it's better to share, but I'm also, you can be addicted to thinking at some point because it's fun to connect the dots. It becomes relevant when you share the connections you make with other people who share those connections, that you can then realize things together. And that then empowerment lies mainly in the fact that you can do things together. This is what you and me, what you force me to do a lot, to make things, I would say, connected to something that has a next step and can move into a next version, or that you can test and go with the flow of sharing it with other people. Just leaving it in your head constantly, then it's worthless. There's no value in just thinking in your own head. The value just starts to come out when you share it with others.
I will now switch gears and do one of my fun topics. I have looked at your Instagram feed, and I have chosen one picture which I would like you to explain to the listeners. So you have a picture where you hold, which is called "Explain the Pig." So you have a picture where you hold a red book which says "Not invented here." What is that about?
Oh yeah,
tell me the story.
Well, this is a book created by a good friend of mine called Ramon Vullings. And Ramon has I met him in a forest somewhere in the top east of Holland at a festival called the Natural Networking Festival. At the time, he exited. I think he was in one of the bigger consultancies, and he got out and he started to look for ways to create value by moving people through innovation processes. And what he did was create a little booklet that is now the stepping stone for all of his talks. And it's mainly the essence of what he's doing is offering people a cross-industry innovation perspective. So it's relatively easy to think, to say, well, okay, you just have to look to another industry and get inspired. But this guy is the navigator that will take you to industries that you have never even thought of, and make connecting dots relevant to your own industry. So he works a lot with, I would say, bigger energy companies, water companies, and all utility-focused companies. But he also does talks at NASA and all those things based on the idea and the premise that when you are stuck, the only thing you need to do is look at what other people also are doing, and see how that inspires you to innovate yourself. And the not invented here syndrome is something that is mainly focused on the fact that you when you are not part of creating an idea, you tend to say, no, I don't want it. This is not, but his focus is to see to turn that around and look exactly the other way and say, well, let's look at what was not invented here and see if we can use that to spark some new paths for us to innovate. And it's a very interesting booklet.
Yeah. What was making you doing that photo in the fun way you did it?
Because I got, I think it's a book where I went like this, right? Look like this.
Yeah.
So, and one of the good things that he did at the moment that he wasn't as famous as he is right now with his book, he just gave me 20 books, and he says they're for you to give away. Whenever you think this is a book somebody needs to inspire them to innovate, to empower them to innovate, he said give it to them, and they were all signed. Oh no! So that's not true because I got them in plastic. But the idea was that whenever you were making the connection with him, he would sign the book. And it's a great way for him to get entrance to all kinds of people, based on the people I know, because I have a very big network of people that do very different things, and the ones that I gave the booklet to, they automatically find the door of Ramon, who is an excellent innovation.
That's clever. Yeah.
Guy to invite. Yeah.
We should do that as well one day.
Yeah.
And that's definitely clever.
The good thing is that he was inspired. I think I have it over here. He was inspired because I have them next to each other. That's
where you would see, by the way, that we haven't prepared anything. We're just going live together.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a booklet. This is about this big. It's a square booklet, but it was inspired by this booklet, Still Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And it's almost exactly the same. So he did Steal Like an Artist, which was a really, really good thing. And he actually, I think Austin did the same thing because he's written in the book to me saying to Dennis, stealing together is fun. It's more fun. So which is a great way, making the connection with somebody with these books and with a special note for Dennis. Great minds think connected. And they're like, oh, it's suddenly something that he's giving you whatever he's thinking. And I've been using this a lot to inspire people as well. And he has this great thing called DJing. And the idea DJing is about how to just use a lot of pictures to spark the conversation. Mm. And it's he's got a good partner doing that, Mark Helleven.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things, at least I believe in, is modeling what is successful. When you want to innovate, it's like using things that are working somewhere else and applying them in a different context. That's the easiest way to innovate because it's working. So why should you reinvent the whole wheel if you can take an existing wheel and paint it in a different color or make it differently? Yeah. That's definitely
people get stuck.
Yeah, Absolutely.
People get stuck in their ways, and the only if there is a role for us to play, it's to make those people who are stuck, to unlock them in that sense, and to make them realize that there's other paths to walk, and to empower them to walk those paths.
You're saying unlock and starting to laugh, which nobody will get except the two of us. So now you need to explain it. So you're the co-founder of Unlock 2020. Tell everyone what Unlock 2020 is about without saying anything.
Yeah. So it is pretty much about what we just said. So it's trying to guide people to a point where they, from some analysis of their context, and people guiding the questioning towards getting a better grip on where they are right now, and then unlocking the parts that need to be unlocked to innovate. And I would say the the pandemic is one of the big things, of course, that are driving so many new innovations nowadays. But it's been, that's just an excuse. There's always been things in industries that have been groundbreaking in innovation. And there's always been people who have been so stuck in their ways that they need like an electric shock to break them free of what they're doing. And I would say one of the things that we started out to do was to see if we can take the people who are in charge away from their main way of looking at the things within the company, and see what everything that they are doing stands in relation, how it stands in the relation to the rest of the world, and how you could then use and be open to what is happening in stuff like this, to other industries and to other possibilities and opportunities to start to look in different ways to the same thing that you are doing. And in that sense, it's a whole lot of words to say we are unlocking you. And then when you're unlocked, you still need to realize these things, of course. And that's also something that we are modeling our way through, how to help people to do that and to empower people to do that.
Prototyping, is that called, or something like that? So can you give a more specific example how you could unlock a person, maybe looping it back to visual ways of working? How do you unlock a person's mindset? So there's my first reaction to a lot of things is drawing, of course, but I would say the thing that lies behind it is once you put something on a piece of paper or on a wall, it becomes literally becomes a mirror to your current situation. And if you ask the questions that are flying around a person that might be stuck, there's going to be one or two questions that start to feel maybe uncomfortable. And this is usually the space where it's very interesting to start to go deeper and see what that means. And unlocking a person, of course, is not something that is just done from one way. When somebody or a company or whatever is stuck, it's usually because the whole system is stuck. Or it's functioning very well in a certain way, but it's very difficult to change something in that way because there's so many interdependent pieces that are moving around. That one thing changes, everything changes, and nobody likes change in that sense. But I would say what the best way to get somebody to unlock is to make them comfortable with the fact that they are going to change or that they need to change. And making them comfortable to change is a task in itself, because it's in that sense, when you are
asking somebody who doesn't know yet that they need unlocking, that's, I would say, one of the most fun things is to make them doubt and see that there's something that they need to explore. And somebody who is very clear about what they're doing, maybe they just should be doing what they should be doing. But at some point, you need to have the foresight that at some things are going to, because things move in waves. Your perfect high will not last forever. So you need to reprogramming at some point. And this is what everybody does, what everybody is doing around the world. Doesn't matter what culture or whatever person you are, everybody changes. And this is something, if you're comfortable to do that, then it's easier to start on your way to change.
Speaking about comfortable and being uncomfortable, connecting the dots again. The first time we met was when you have been dressed as a priest. If you remember that's long,
bishop, or even the Pope.
Oh, bishop, yeah. I didn't want to say Pope because I wasn't sure. So at least you have been a religious figure.
Yeah.
So keeping the frame of unlock. What is the story about? What was the dress and the way you acted as a pope or priest unlocking in people, and what is the story behind it?
So I would say the story behind it is a very serendipitous one, because I did not choose to be the Pope. It was thrusted upon me by somebody in a very dark chamber filled with costumes, and I got this bishop hat thrust upon my head, and then everybody was doing all kinds of other things, and then I liked the hat. I was like, oh, but then the guy who was actually one of the owners of the room, Klaus, he came up to me and said, oh, if you like that, then you should have this. And then he brought the whole priest bishop
robe.
Out,
robe.
And then I got a whole new appreciation for how bishops go to the toilet. Because that was but in that sense, it was connected to I would say a magical space where the biggest thing that was happening there was, once you move over the threshold of the castle that we were in, you were given another role to play. And this is another part of the unlocking mechanism. When you are playing a different role, you are accepting that and you are embracing it, you break free from a lot of things that you might think in a certain way. So becoming that, I would say, religious person, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because whenever people were walking by, they went like this, and I just went like this, or like this. And it's like, oh my God! And being a Roman Catholic from way back when, I kind of fell off my faith when I was about 18 or 20. But I know everything about the Roman Catholic Church, and about what this robe and what this uniform effectively, what it represents. So in me, it unlocked a whole lot of things that had to do with my past, and it had to do with people reacting to me in a certain way, it just opened up a whole different way of looking at what we were there to do, and that was to get a better grip on how to design experiences.
So what could other, like, people listening to us now learn from an innovation perspective? If you want to innovate, how could you use something like this?
Well, and, there's very small things you can do to already embrace different roles. I think it was the Bono book about the 6 thinking hats. That's already, if you have 6 colored blocks on the table, and you grab one, it's like this is the logical block, and then you have to only react from that perspective. That's already doing a huge favor to how your brain works and how you focus on only one space. And maybe you ask the not logical person to be extremely logical, which is good for that person. And the very action driven person needs to be extremely emotional. And this is helpful for anybody to maybe adopt a totally different perspective, because it opens up that different way of looking at things. And the combination of people doing this together leads to the fact that you are never assured of good ideas, but it's usually always happens.
Yeah. What I liked very much about that was it's like it was pushing down the barriers, because you don't know the other person, and you have been dressed in a silly way. I was dressed in a silly way. I was not the Pope. But what was interesting, it was not about like if you innovate in a large corporation, where I was doing at that time, it's always about status. It's about like who is higher in the ranks, and it's an ecosystem of hierarchy, even if you work in an organization that's not really hierarchical. But it helped to break that down, because in the same room where we have been Hollywood movie producers, which if you don't know them, then you don't know, because they're dressed in a silly way like you are. And I think that's also something which companies or individuals can use in a way to innovate, is like reducing the barriers of the people interacting, and reducing and building opportunities to interact in different ways, because it's always a preconception. If you're the big boss, then I need to please you. Even if you're in a low hierarchy setting, it's always there, and it's always somewhere hidden. But I think that's a different way when you make people, get them on the same level, just with silly costumes or heads or whatever. I've used that a couple of times.
Yeah. But there's if we said the word unlock, there is you never know. For me, the bishop costume unlocked a certain thing that was very fitting to the character I was and still probably am at the time, because I was embracing it a lot, and then it literally became a character that people accepted in that space. Oh, there's the Pope, and it's like, and it becomes a role you play, and it wasn't a role that I was given in the space that I was there was before. I was always a part of a group, never the I would say the exalted leader of a faith, which comes with certain things. And the weird thing is that when you are confronted with that behavior from others, it does something else with your own mind, and you go to different places in your head, and that's literally, I would say, the benefit of doing that. But what you also see is that there's people who are usually very quiet. When they get the right costume or the right I have all these elements. I have like a nice bowl here, and I have weird little things that you can look through. And when you or puppets that make you go for a certain goal, there's all kinds of things. Some people when they get a thing like this, and they go into let's think in a different way, it truly unlocks places in their head that they haven't been to. And I would say mainly people who might not be extroverts, but introverted people, giving permission to be extroverts because they now have a different costume, they go nuts. Because they have these structures in place that make them an introvert. But now, when they are the Joker, suddenly there's a whole different person coming out. It's like, oh my God, this is so cool. He wasn't. He was usually he's not like this, but when he's like this, he's even cooler, or she,
Yeah.
or whatever.
I have an interesting story to that. When I
Yeah,
was there at that event, I was there with my team, and we have used it a little bit as a team building. So we attached a day before, and we traveled. At that time, I was living in Moscow in Russia. So we traveled all together, the whole team, and then we did an exercise where you basically talk about your life and introduce yourself from A to Z, and the whole team is just listening. And one of the guys was introducing himself as the introvert, and we joked about this, and still joking about that he's the introvert. He was like the most fun person inside the castle experience, because he was dressed up, and everyone was saying, like, no way that you're introvert, that's not true. And he was saying, no, I'm introvert. But he was dancing in the dungeon bar, and giving out drinks and so on, in an area where most probably he would never do this in a business setting, but it was like a conference, but it was not a conference. So it was normal, because everyone was dressed and everyone was a different person. So it was quite interesting to see people switching, like you just said, and experiencing that.
I think the most important thing is it's a little bit like getting permission to draw in a professional environment. It seems that there are some barriers that have been created in our professional lives. Mainly, I would say our children are now growing up without a lot of those barriers, because we're a lot more inclusive and a lot more open to possibility and opportunity. But we've been taught to function in a system that looks and rates you in a certain way. And if you don't function well, you don't end up in a higher place, and you always need to go up, and all those kinds of things. Looking at those things in a different way really helps to deprogram how and it is, I would say, a trend that is happening anyway. But you need to I would say you can't put a bomb under it. Maybe sometimes you should, and in some, like in Greece, when they have in Greece the big crisis that they had, right now they have new structures that are so innovative. But it came from a lot of hardship and a lot of pain and deprogramming. It was like, oh yeah, but do you willingly put your hand in the fire like that? So no, you don't. And only a crisis creates that. And in that sense, who was it again who says never waste a good crisis?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you don't need to look for a crisis in that sense, but once there is a crisis, you should write it like it's a gift, because there's always space for people to think in a different way.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the possibilities of COVID. I know it's not the best thing to do, and to have like a pandemic where we are right in, and we are recording this in November 2020. I think it's like one opportunity every single person has, is using this as an opportunity, changing ways of thinking and doing something which they wouldn't do in a normal setting, which is like, you're dressed now in a different way, take down your barriers and innovate. Use this as an opportunity and change your life, change your business, turning things around. And I was just this morning on after hour call. In between, I was on a call with one of my clients who went from a 100% offline business to a 100% online business due to COVID right now. And he needs to rethink how he's doing business. He needs to reprogram his way of selling, his way of interacting with his clients and customers and so on. And that takes time. But I think he would never have done this if COVID wasn't there. And I believe this is the biggest business opportunity for his company, that COVID has arrived. Of course, it's hard to say right now, but with the changes going from a fully physical environment to a digital environment and having the possibility to do both afterwards when COVID is gone or people can meet properly again. I mean, that's you just doubled your opportunity stack. I think that's huge opportunity. Slowly going towards an end. I have an interesting question,
What,
which
already?
I would like. I don't know. We are already an hour in or something. I don't have a watch here, so it feels like 20 minutes. I could stay here the next two days. So, but we're not there yet. So, if you could draw a visual that everyone in the whole world could see, what will it be, and why would you draw it?
So would it be a visual that everybody understands, or
Doesn't
could
matter.
it be?
You can choose.
So I think I have an answer to that. It's a bit of a performance thing, because I am a big fan of the Japanese brush calligraphy brush ritual called the Enzo.
Like the guys who are doing this the whole time, and then there's a picture afterward, or
no. It's a ritual where you focus on being inside of the moment and make one circle in a complete and total presence in that moment, dedicating you to draw that circle. And it's a very much a testament to anything that has to do with the Japanese perspective. They focus on being inside of the moment, on perfection and imperfection, on all kinds of things that are just inside of that one line. And I have been looking to do that, but not. It doesn't need to be inside of a ritual, in that sense. Not that I don't like rituals, but let's say I don't need it to be a Japanese ritual. And the reason why I think it's very interesting is that, and I will draw it for you because it's when you get the circle like this. It's something that has a beginning and it has an end. And the idea about this is that when you totally make it round, it is infinite. When you leave it open a little bit, it tends to say that there's the end of a path. You know, when you draw it and you get to almost the end, you say, well, there is something new coming. And this inspired me in 2017 to look at the same thing based on something that comes from, I would say, a very two-dimensional modeling world of business modeling called the S-curve. And the S-curve is the growth curve. So it looks like this. There you go. So this is the S-curve.
Or hockey stick.
It's the hockey stick, yes. So I was working with a lady who has been trying to articulate new ways of governing companies, or I would say it doesn't have to be organizations, anything to even governmental level. And in her quest, she found that there's usually, when you go from one state to another state, and this is very easy to do because you just add another S-curve. When you go from one state to another state, you have a kind of a dissonance between these two. Because this is where people tend to focus on how to control things, and this is where people start new things, and there's a tension in between there. And I was working with her on a lot of things to create these visuals to make more sense to people to focus on how to look at new ways to govern. And I was so busy with this S-curve that at some point, and the S-curve moves over time. So it's a value over time. I don't know if I'm in mirror language right now, but it's value over time.
It works.
Yeah. And but the idea there is that I found it very interesting that the circle that we have. So the circle, if you take one end and the other end and you just lay it out. So just if you take a pair of scissors and you cut it, and you have a string that you lay the circle out, then you could say, well, anything that happens inside of the moment of creation, you can map out and say, well, I have from here, from zero to the point that it ended, I have this line, and there's all kinds of things that are happening there. And this is where I started to get really, really interested in unfolding the end zone. And so you have the end zone, which is the circle in the ritual of the Japanese ritual, but unfolding it, it creates this line. And I would say this is the line that I would like to draw in front of the whole world, naked, with a really big brush, hanging on a really big string, going over, I would say, maybe a 50-meter distance. So it's a really huge...
I want to see that. Maybe not the naked part, but...
No, yeah, well, naked is just part of the ritual.
No, you can. You're fine to do that.
Transparent. No, but one of the reasons is that I have a deep appreciation for what the Enzo circles, what they deliver as an end result, because it's always an imperfect line, and in the line there's all kinds of life. And it doesn't matter if a computer tries to do it. If you put the arm inside of a computer and it goes like this, the brush takes care of the fact that it will always be something different. You know, the density of the water, the ink, the brush, it can never be the same. And the cool thing about that is if you make that drawing, you have in front of you something that is only one part of what you are doing. You know, you will in your life probably go through about 7 of these curves. If you're lucky, you will go through even more. But the idea is that if you are confronted with this line, you then start to figure out where you are in that line, and it will help you to get unstuck, or at least be aware of where you are, be conscious of what your choices are, and take action accordingly. Because maybe when you are extremely happy, this is exactly the point where we need to teach our kids to already start to think about how to go to the next phase.
Yeah, awesome. So, last question. Where will you be and what will you be doing in a year from now?
So now it's the 23rd of November, 2021. I hope we'll be in Sweden, because this year in the pandemic times, we will not be celebrating Christmas in Sweden. And maybe right now it's a little bit too early, but I hope we'll be able to travel. And where I will be is in a place where I think the stuff that I've been working on for the last 6 years have found a visible end result, and that I will be sharing that finally after a very long time of working on it. I will become 48 next year. So I give myself 2 more years until I'm 50. If I don't get anything out of that, then I'll just help others. And up until that time, I'm helping myself to see if I can have all the stuff that's in my head come out in a way that I can share it. Because this is one of the biggest problems I've had when you're troubled with a vision that you cannot articulate. And this is also something where I help people with because I recognize that in people when they cannot articulate a vision or a mission in life or something that they need to get out to start to move. And I'm thinking I've been waiting so long to start to actually move, and getting in touch with you and doing the stuff that we're doing, that's already pushing me towards the actual movement itself. So I'll be moving.
That's a great compliment. No, I'm 100% you will achieve that, if not beyond that. I'm 100% sure. So thank you very much for joining me today in the first episode ever of the Connecteurs Innovation Talk.
From New York?
Yes, I have forgotten it. I wanted to introduce the window to the world, which I did in a couple of meetings. So that's the window to the world, to the innovation world.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for everyone who is listening, if you're interested to be part of the Connectors movement, I have set myself a goal for next year. I want to impact 1 million people to innovate. So please follow me, join in. If you want to talk on this podcast format, I will be launching every week a new podcast. So please contact me and follow me on socials. Of course, I will put into the show notes and into the comments as well, where you can find Dennis. Or Dennis, do you want just to say where people can find you?
Well, you can find me on visuallyyours.nl, and just to make it uncomplicated, Visually Yours is with 2 Y's and 2 L's, not 2. Some people don't get that, but when you see me, you can find me there and find all other things that I'm connected to. And if you keep in touch with Jens, eventually you will start to see my head, because I'm also part of his platform, coaches platform, and growing other things.
Yes. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Dennis, for your time.
Thank you for inviting me for the very first time.
It's a pleasure.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical land, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end.